Seeds of ambition Farah Malik wiped condensation from her glasses as steam rose from the prototype on her workbench. 3 years of research, countless sleepless nights, and her entire savings account had culminated in this moment. Her filtration system, barely larger than a briefcase, could purify contaminated water at 1/10 the cost of current technologies. "It works," she whispered, watching crystal-clear water drip into the collection basin. For the villages in drought-stricken regions where she'd grown up. This wasn't just innovation, it was survival. The industrial space that housed Clearwater Solutions wasn't much: exposed brick walls, second-hand furniture, and 6 passionate engineers who believed in her vision enough to accept delayed paychecks. What they lacked in capital, they made up for in purpose. "The World Water Forum called again," said Priya, her operations manager, leaning against the door frame. "They want us to present next month in Geneva." Farah's heart raced. "That's incredible. But we need funding to scale production for the demonstration," Priya finished. "I know. They'd approached 17 investors. 17 rejections. Traditional venture capitalists wanted quick returns, not humanitarian technology with thin margins. Farah needed someone who understood the long game." Across London, in a glass-walled office overlooking the Thames, Julian Reynolds swirled amber whiskey in a crystal tumbler. At 36, he'd built Monarch Ventures into a powerhouse by identifying diamonds in the rough, small companies with valuable intellectual property he could acquire, restructure, and sell at massive profit. "Clearwater Solutions," his assistant Dominic said, sliding a folder across the polished desk. "Small water purification startup. Their technology is revolutionary, but they're running out of cash." Julian skimmed the documents, pausing at Farah's credentials. PhD in chemical engineering from Imperial College, research fellowship at MIT, published papers on water purification nanotechnology. "Impressive," he murmured. "What's their burn rate?" 3 months before they're insolvent," Julian smiled. Desperation made for favorable terms. "Arrange a meeting." The following afternoon, Farah sat across from Julian in Monarch's sleek conference room, feeling distinctly out of place in her practical blazer amid the bespoke suits. "Your technology is promising," Julian said, his tone measured. "But commercial viability requires proper capitalization and management." "We need funding, not a takeover," Farah replied. "I built this company to help people, not shareholders." Julian leaned forward, green eyes calculating beneath perfectly styled dark hair. "What if you could have both? £5 million in funding, global distribution networks, manufacturing at scale." Farah hesitated. "And what do you want in return?" "A reasonable equity stake, board representation, standard protections." He smiled, revealing perfect teeth. "Most importantly, I want your company to succeed, Ms. Malik." As Farah left the meeting with a term sheet in hand, she felt a mixture of hope and unease. This could be everything Clearwater needed, if she could trust Julian Reynolds. What she couldn't see was Julian's text to his lawyer. "Draw up the special terms we discussed. This one's perfect." Signatures in ink, the contract arrived in a leather portfolio embossed with the Monarch Ventures logo. Farah spread the documents across her desk, the legal jargon stretching for 43 pages. Her small team gathered around, eyes wide at the investment figure, £5 million. "This changes everything," whispered Priya. "We could scale production, hire more engineers, reach communities in Sudan by year's end." "I still think we should have our own lawyer review it," said Omar, Farah's head engineer, his brow furrowed. "Reynolds has a reputation," Farah nodded. "I've scheduled a meeting with a contract attorney, but they can't see us until next week." Her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "World Water Forum registration deadline is tomorrow. Need the funding secured to guarantee your presentation slot." Farah's stomach tightened. The forum was their chance to showcase the technology to NGOs and government agencies from around the world, potential partners who valued impact over profit margins. "Ms. Malik," Julian's smooth voice filled her office the next morning as he arrived unannounced, immaculate in a charcoal suit. "I thought I'd check if you had questions before finalizing our arrangement. Actually, I was hoping for more time to review." "Of course," he interrupted, sliding into a chair. Due diligence is important, though I should mention that Suntech Industries reached out about their own purification system. If we delay much longer, he let the implication hang in the air. For 3 hours, Julian walked her through the contract, explaining clauses with practiced ease, deflecting concerns with reassurances. His presence filled the small office, his cologne mingling with the scent of circuit boards and soldering flux. This performance milestone schedule seems aggressive, Farah noted, pointing to a page buried deep in the appendix. Julian waved dismissively. Standard benchmarks. Your projections already exceed these targets. He checked his watch. The forum registration closes in an hour. Shall I have my assistant submitted, or? Farah stared at the signature line, her vision narrowing to that small blank space that represented either her company's salvation or surrender. The weight of her team's expectations, the faces of villagers who needed clean water, the looming deadline, all pressed down on her shoulders. If we miss these targets? She asked. Then we adjust the strategy together, Julian replied smoothly. This is a partnership, Farah. What she couldn't see was the clause on page 37, buried in subsection 14.3b. In the event that company fails to meet 2 consecutive quarterly performance targets as defined in Schedule C, investor shall have the option to acquire all intellectual property and patent rights at a valuation, determined by the formula in Exhibit F. The formula in Exhibit F would ensure that valuation would be pennies on the pound, Farah signed. Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes as they shook hands. Welcome to the Monarch family. The initial months brought everything Julian promised. New equipment filled their expanded laboratory. The team grew to 15 engineers. Their presentation at the World Water Forum garnered international attention and preliminary agreements with 3 humanitarian organizations. Behind the scenes, Julian orchestrated subtle complications. Key components for production runs faced mysterious delays. Potential distribution partners received concerned calls about Clearwater's organizational readiness. Small regulatory hurdles appeared at critical moments. We're falling behind on Q2 targets, Priya reported 6 months later, confusion in her voice. I can't explain it. Everything was on track until Julian became involved, Farah finished, a cold realization spreading through her chest. She pulled out the contract, reading it line by line until she found what she had missed. Her phone rang. Julian's name appeared on the screen. Hello, Farah, he said. I think it's time we discuss the future of your intellectual property. The takeover. The Monarch Ventures boardroom fell silent as Farah slammed her palm against the polished mahogany table. This is theft wrapped in legalese, she said, her voice controlled despite the anger burning beneath her skin. You deliberately created circumstances for us to fail. Julian leaned back in his chair, surrounded by his executives and legal team. The contract is perfectly clear, Dr. Malik. Your company missed 2 consecutive quarterly targets. The intellectual property transfer clause has been triggered because your supply chain manager accidentally delayed our components by 3 weeks. Because your helpful introduction to the Kenyan ministry ended with our permits mysteriously denied. Julian spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. Business is unpredictable. That's why contracts include contingencies. Farah looked around the table, searching for a sympathetic face among Julian's assembled team. She found none. The valuation formula puts our technology that could help millions, at barely £1 million. 1/5 of your investment, which you'll receive as compensation, Julian replied. A fair return considering the company's underperformance. The corporate takeover proceeded with ruthless efficiency. By nightfall, Clearwater Solutions existed only on paper. Its assets, patents, and research now belonged to Monarch's newest subsidiary, Pure Solutions International. Julian stood in Clearwater's laboratory the following morning, surveying his acquisition. Engineers worked silently at their stations, the atmosphere heavy with resentment. Nothing needs to change, he announced to the assembled team. Same mission, better resources. Those who stay will receive generous compensation packages. Priya stepped forward, resignation letter in hand. "You're not buying our loyalty, Mr. Reynolds." One by one, each team member followed her lead. By noon, Julian stood alone in an empty laboratory, surrounded by equipment but devoid of the minds that gave it purpose. "Minor setback," he told Dominic over the phone. "Hire a new team. Poach from Parker Hydro and Watex Systems. Double the salaries if necessary." Within weeks, Julian had assembled a replacement team of qualified engineers. Yet problems emerged immediately. The documentation left by Farah's team, while comprehensive, lacked the intuitive understanding that comes from building something from the ground up. The prototype units failed quality testing repeatedly. Small calibration issues became major performance problems. The elegant simplicity of Farah's design became an enigmatic puzzle to engineers who hadn't lived with it for years. Meanwhile, Farah hadn't disappeared quietly. The humanitarian organizations that had been eager to partner with Clearwater withdrew their interest from Pure Solutions after learning of the takeover. A damaging profile in the Financial Times questioned Monarch's predatory acquisition tactics targeting female-founded startups. Most devastating was the exodus of Clearwater's original component suppliers. Many were small businesses in developing countries that Farah had cultivated relationships with over years. "They refused to work with us," Dominic reported. "Something about loyalty to Dr. Malik's vision." Julian stared out his office window at the rain-slicked London streets below. He'd acquired the technology, but the soul of the company, the relationships, the mission, the passionate drive, had slipped through his fingers like water. His phone chimed with a notification. Farah Malik had just announced the formation of a new company, Watershed Collective, with backing from a women-led impact investment fund. Their first project? Community-based water purification training. Programs using accessible technologies she couldn't rebuild. Her exact filtration system, those patents now belonged to Julian. But she was rebuilding something perhaps more valuable. A network of people committed to solving water scarcity regardless of profit margins. For the first time in his career, Julian had won a battle but was losing the war.